Hey Loomers, today I'm going to teach you how to make this Nefertari bracelet. It is an original design, a hook only design. If you decide to make this, please hashtag it Nefertari Bracelet. Please don't forget to give me credit. I don't really have anything else to say, so yeah, let's just get started. I will be using 3 colors. These are not rainbow loom bands, but I'm going to be using silver for the border, lavender and this other color, and I'm going to be alternating inside between these 2 colors. Okay? So obviously starting off with a cap band and a 12 loop setup, 18 bands on total on one side, and 16 bands in total on your hook. So cap band, pull 2 bands through it, reattach, and then we start our 12 loop setup from here.
You cut my heart in a million pieces. Damn, why you gotta be so heartless? Why you gotta be so heartless? You cut my heart in a million pieces.
So once you have your 12 loop set up, we are going to take the 9th band, which would be this band, and cross it over the 8th. Now we're going to take a inner band color and pull that through the first 8. We're gonna skip the first band and pick up all of these bands here, and then we're going to reattach the band we pulled through. Rearrange all of these bands. Now what we want to do is we want to remove the first 6 bands, but still holding onto them. Take the 3rd band and lift it or move it up and over your hook and just drop it off, like that. And then you can put all these bands back on. Like I said, I was going to alternate colors, so grab your second inner color band. You want to pull that through the first 7 bands. You want to skip the first band and then reclaim everything and then reattach the band you pulled through. Next, we are going to rearrange everything, and we are going to remove the first 5 bands. Then drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and put all those bands back on. Grab your 3rd inner color band, and we're going to pull that through the first 6 bands. Skip the first band and pick up the outside 5 bands and reattach. We're going to rearrange all of these bands. We are going to remove the first 4 bands. Then we are going to drop the 3rd band up and over our hook, and we are going to put the bands back on. That would be 4. Okay, sorry guys, I just realized that was the same color, which is a mistake because I was supposed to be alternating. Let me just fix that real quick. So like I was saying, pull this next band through the first 5 bands. Skip the first band and pick up the outside 4. Then reattach. Rearrange these 4. Remove the first 3, but you're still holding on to it. And then drop the 3rd band up and over your hook. and then put those bands back on. We have one more band left on this side. This one goes through the first 4. Skip the first band, pick up all these 3 bands and reattach. You want to rearrange these 3 outside bands. Remove the first 2, but you're still holding on to them. And then drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, and then reattach those 2 bands. Before we move on to do the other side, we need to attach 4 bands onto this side. They're going to be border bands. You're going to make a single chain, you're not going to be doing the fishtailed stitch. Grab your first border band and then just reattach the other side. Second, reattach. Third, pull it through, reattach. So it should look something like this. Now we're going to do the other side. So take your first border band for this side. Pull that through the first 8 bands. Skip the first band. Pick up all these bands here and reattach and then rearrange. Remove the first 6 bands off of your hook, but you're still holding onto them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, and then put these bands back on. Grab your second inner color band, and you want to pull that through the first 7 bands. Skip the first band. Pick up everything else, then rearrange. Remove the first 5 bands. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, and then you're going to put these bands back on. Grab your 3rd band on this side, pull that through the first 6 bands, skip the first band, pick up all these bands, rearrange, remove the first 4 bands, but you're still holding on to them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, reattach the bands you took off, grab your 4th band, pull that through the first 5 bands, skip the first band, pick up all these bands, so 4, reattach, rearrange, remove the first 3, hold on to them, and then drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and put those 3 bands back on your hook. We have one more band to attach on this side. Pull that through the first 4. Skip the first band. And we're going to pick up all of these bands and reattach. Then we're going to rearrange. Remove the first 2 bands, holding on to them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and reattach the 2 bands you took off. Now we are going to attach 3 links on this side. So pull a band through those 3 bands, then reattach, pull another band through and then reattach through those 2 bands, pull your 3rd band through and reattach. Now this design, guys, is very band consuming, so pull 2 border bands through the first 10 bands. We're going to skip all of these inner color bands and reclaim these 2 outside bands and then reattach those 2 bands and then rearrange. Next, we're gonna grab another border band and pull that through the first 4 bands and reattach. Do the same on the other side. So turn your hook around and pulling that band through the first 4 bands and reattach. To close it off, at least for this part, is just take 2 bands and pull that through the 4 bands on your hook and reattach. And there is your first part. Okay, so to begin a new sequence, we need to start again with a 12 loop setup. I'm just gonna be putting some lotion on my hook because it's getting hard to work with my bands.
You cut my heart in a million pieces. Damn, why you gotta be so heartless? Why you gotta
Pull your first border band through the first 2 bands, pick up the outside band and reattach.
Damn, why you gotta be so heartless? Why you gotta be so heartless? You got me like
Okay, so again, we have to cross our 9th band over our 8th. Keep it in place. Grab your first inner color band, pull that through the first 8 bands. Skip the first band, pick up every one of these bands and reattach, and then rearrange all these bands. Next, we are going to remove the first 6 bands, but we're still going to be holding on to them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and place these bands back on. Grab your second inner color band, pull that through the first 7 bands, skip the first band, pick up all of these bands and then reattach and also rearrange. We're going to remove the first 5 bands, still holding onto them. Drop the 3rd band up and over our hook and place the bands you removed back on. Grab your 3rd inner band and pull that through the first 6 bands. Skip the first band, pick up all these bands and reattach. Rearrange all these bands, which would be 5. Remove the first 4 bands, still holding onto them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, and then place these bands back on. Grab your 4th inner color band, pull that through the first 5 bands, skip the first band, pick up everything else, reattach, and rearrange everything else. Remove the first 3, still holding onto them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, reattach the bands that you removed. Okay guys, I just have to fix the color because I realized I just pulled through the same color twice. It's easier when I don't have to tell you guys like numerically where the bands have to go. When I create these designs, I don't initially go by the numbers. I just like pull bands through and then later on I figure out. So pull through your 5th band through the first 4 bands. Skip the first band. Reclaim everything. Rearrange everything. Remove the first 2 bands, holding onto them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and place those bands back on. We are going to be attaching 3 border bands on this side and just making a single chain. So pull your first band through the first 3 bands, reattach, pull the second one through the first two, reattach, pull your last band through the first two and reattach. Slide your bands down and turn your hook around. Grabbing your first band on this side and pull that through the first 8 bands. Skip the first band and pick up all of these bands and then reattach, and then rearrange all the bands. Remove the first 6 bands. Drop the third band up and over your hook and place these bands back on. Grab your second inner color band. Pull up through the first 7 bands. Skip the first band. Pick up all the bands and reattach. Now we have to rearrange all these bands. Remove the first 5 bands, still holding onto them. Drop the third band up and over your hook and place these bands back on. Grab your third band. Pull that through the first 6 bands. Skip the first band. Pick up all these bands and also rearrange all these bands. Remove the first 4 bands, holding onto them still. Drop the third band up and over your hook and place these bands back on. Okay guys, don't freak out if the color changed. It's because I messed up and I did put the same color down again. So, if you catch that, good for you. So now we're going to pull our 4th band through the first 5 bands. Skip the first band, pick up all of these bands here. Rearrange all the bands. Remove the first 3, still holding onto them. Drop the third band up and over your hook and place the 3 bands back on. Placing our last band, or 5th band. Pull that through the first 4 bands. Skip the first band. Reclaim all these 3 and reattach. Rearrange these 3 bands. Remove the first 2 bands and holding onto them still, drop the third band up and over your hook and reattach the 2 bands that you took off. We have to attach 3 links onto this side, border color bands. Pull up through the first 3 bands and reattach. Next, pull your second band through the first 2 bands, reattach, and your last band through the first 2 bands and reattach. It's time for us to put our border color bands that go under these bands again in the middle. So, grab your 2 border bands and pull that through the first 10 bands. Skip all of these inner color bands and pick up the outside 2 and reattach. Then rearrange. We want to add 2 more bands in total, so 1 on this side and 1 on the other side. So grab your border color band and pull that through the first 4 bands and just reattach. Slide your bands down, turn your hook around. Grabbing a border band and pulling that through the first 4 bands, reattach. So now to close this part off and to start a new one, you want to pull 2 border band colors through those 4 on your hook, and you want to reattach. So there you go, guys. Here are your first two. I'm gonna show you guys one more time. And then I think I'm gonna do one clip without talking. And I'm gonna be working slowly. So you have your 4 bands again. Starting off with our 12 loop setup. Pull your first band through the first 2. Pick up the outside band and reattach. Just keep doing that until you have 12 loops, 16 bands in total on your hook. Okay, so once you have finished your 12 loop setup, again, we are going to cross our 9th band over our 8th. And we're ready to pull our first inner color band. Your first band goes through the first 8 bands. You skip the first band and pick up all of these bands here and reattach. Rearrange all of these bands. You want to remove the first 6 bands, holding onto them still, and drop the 3rd band up and over your hook. Place these bands back on your hook. Okay guys, if you notice that there's a different color, I had messed up again. You can clearly see what happened. So grab your 2nd band and pull that through the first 7 bands. And you want to skip the first band and pick up all of these bands and reattach. And also rearrange all of these bands. You want to remove the first 5 bands. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and place all these 5 bands on your hook again. Grabbing your 3rd inner color band, pulling that through the first 6 bands, skip the first band, and pick up all of these bands here. Reattach the band you pulled through. And also we're going to rearrange those bands. Remove the first 4 bands, still holding onto them, and drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, and place those 4 bands back on. Grabbing your 4th band, pull that through the first 5 bands, skip the first band, pick up the outside 4, reattach, and you want to rearrange these outside 4. So now we're going to remove the first 3 bands, but still holding onto them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook, and place those 3 bands back on. We're going to grab our last or 5th band, and we're going to pull that through the first 4 bands, skip the first band, pick up the outside bands, and reattach. That should be 3 bands. Rearrange those 3 bands. Remove the first 2, still holding on to them. Drop the 3rd band up and over your hook and reattach. It's time for us to attach 3 bands on this side, border color bands. Pull your first band through the first 3 bands and reattach. Again, we're just making a single chain, so pull that through the first 2, reattach, and your last one. Slide your bands down and turn your hook around. So grab your first band on this side. That one goes through the first 8 bands. Skip the first band and pick up all of these bands and reattach. Rearrange all of these bands. remove the first 6 bands. Drop the third band up and over our hook, and then place those 6 bands back on. Grab your second band on this side, pull that through the first 7 bands. Skip the first band, pick up all bands, reattach, and rearrange all those bands. Remove the first 5 bands. Drop the third band up and over your hook and place those 5 bands back on. Grab your third band. Pull that one through the first 6 bands, skip the first band, pick up all bands, reattach, and rearrange all bands. Remove the first 4 bands, still holding onto them. Drop the third band up and over your hook. Reattach the 4 bands that you removed. Grabbing your 4th band, pulling that through the first 5 bands, skip the first band, pick up the outside 4, reattach, and rearrange those outside 4. Remove the first 3 bands, still holding onto them, and drop the third band up and over your hook, and reattach the 3 bands that you removed. Grabbing your last or 5th band, pulling that through the first 4 bands, skip the first band, pick up the outside 3 and reattach, rearrange those outside 3, remove the first 2 bands, still holding onto them, drop the third band up and over your hook, and place those bands back on. It is time for us to attach our 3 border band color links on this side. So grab your first band and pull it through the first 3 and reattach. And just make single. Your second band goes through the first 2, reattach, and same with the third and last band. Now we have to pull the 2 bands that go under these bands here in the middle. So pull your 2 border color bands through the first 10 bands. Skip all these inner color bands and pick up the outside 2 and reattach, and then you're going to rearrange those 2. We are going to attach 2 more links, one on this side and one on this side. So pull that through the first 4 bands, reattach, slide your bands down, turn your hook around, pulling your second band for this side through the first 4 and reattach. It's time for us to close and start our new sequence. So for that, we need 2 border color bands. That one goes through all the bands on your hook, so that would be 4. And then you're just going to reattach it. To close it off, it's very simple. You would have to end with these 4 loops on your hook, so 2 bands, and you would just attach your C-clip onto these 4 loops here. So that's how you would close it off. So there, I attached a C-clip to it. And there you have it, your Nefertari bracelet. Please subscribe, guys, and like this video. I really hope this video helps. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I will see you guys later. Bye!